So, we are on chapter 7, and I showed you last time how to create virtual disk using the Hyper-V Manager. I guess what we did here, if you go to run virtual management, so you go to new right here, and you select hard disk, and you follow the wizards, okay? So that's what we did yesterday. So now what we need to do is they talk about the to choose action. Yeah, you have let me see, minimize this one here. You have an option to whenever you do the you create it, you can modify certain aspect of a virtual disk in the edit virtual hard disk wizard, which is you can compact it, convert, expand, merge, or reconnect. So compact means what? You reduce the size of a dynamically expanding disk by eliminating the space used by deleted files. So they explain each one of them on page 249. They compact. Convert, basic an option to convert a virtual hard disk by copying the content to new virtual hard disk, and the new virtual hard disk can be used or can use a different type of format than the original virtual disk. Of course, the expand as an option to expand the capacity of the virtual disk. So, and this is also on page 250. They talk about shrink. You reduce it, merge. That's another option. This option is available only for differentiating disk. So, because whenever you create the virtual disk, let me see if we can do one really quick. Right click here, run virtual management, and you go new, click on new, hard disk, and you follow the wizard, and that's the options you need to select. You make decision on those three options. If you use a generation 2, automatically goes defaulted to VHDX. If you use in generation 1, automatically is going to default it to VHD. Okay, and a virtual VHD set. That's another option. What we use that for? We use it if we need to, if a multiple, if you have a multiple virtual machines, let me record this one here. Wants to access this, the hard disk, then we need a VH set. Okay, and that's what they say here. This format is for shared virtual hard disk only and enabled backup of virtual machines group using shared virtual hard disks. Usually if you want to put like in a cluster or something like that. So that's what you need to do with the VH set. And this format is not supported in the operating system earlier than Windows 10. So you need to make sure. For example, you cannot select this option in Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows whatever before 10. So you follow the wizard, we select the VHDX, then we go next. And over here, you have another types if you want a fixed or dynamic or differentiate. So, so those are the three options. It's defaulted to dynamic because again, we use in generation 2. If we're using generation 1, it's going to default it to fixed size because of the performance. Um, and of course, you have a differencing, as they say, associated like with parent and child relationship, but whatever you select originally is going to go with. Like, for example, let's see, all the this is the parent VHDX format. Now, all the children's going to have the same format. They might have a different size, but they have the same format. So we go next, and this is, you give it a name. So let's call that data 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, or give it whatever name you want. Let me put my keyboard up top right here. New disk. Let's see. New data. Let's see. New data 1. Or let's call it RPM. How about POS? Data. All right, let's see. You go next. Of course, here they ask you for the location where you're going to store it. And you go next. Now they ask you for the size of the disk, or if you want to copy the content of the specified physical disk. Let's see. They always call wrong time. Okay, so 127 gig. So you select, let's say 60, 100, whatever you want. So put 60 gig and copy the content of specified virtual disk. No, so we go over here 60. Now, for example, if you want to copy, what you copy? You copy basically another disk for a virtual machines if you want. So you can do that, but we're not gonna go with that options. You go next. Oh, how you select? Okay, create the blank virtual disk right here. You go next. And over here we finish VHX. So done. All right. Now this is like is available disk. Any virtual, you can attach it to any virtual machine you want. So if you go to the folder, which is right here, where we stored it, you can see it under G drive, I believe, virtual machine folder, VMs folder is right here. And you can see POS data right here. And over here, you can attach it to any virtual machine you want. Let's see, shared, you can mount it, you can store information on it, you can mount it, you can do whatever you want to do. So, question is to add it to a virtual machine, what we can do. Add, or you go to the SCSI controller, or if you want, you can add a new SCSI controller. But there's no need to, because the SCSI controller you can connect up to how many devices? 64 devices. So we go to SCSI controller, we add hard drive, and you add it. And it's not new. I can browse and select the virtual disk that I created a few seconds ago, which is this one here. This is created at 8:10. Then you say open. And notice that is give it the location ID, which is this is going to be disk number 3. And you go, okay, this is where you can do the stuff that options I talked about earlier. So if you go to edit and you go next, and this is when you see the compact, the convert, and the expand. You follow? So these features here is for existing virtual disk. So if you don't want to do any of this stuff, you go previous and you follow the wizard. So we go next. Now they're going to ask you, what do you want to do with the virtual disk? Compact, this option compact the file size of a virtual hard disk. The storage capacity of the virtual hard disk remain the same. Or if you want to convert it to a virtual disk by copying the content to a new, I don't have no data on it to copy it. Or you need to expand. Expand means what? Option expand the capacity of the virtual disk. I don't want to expand. So I keep the default and go next. And now we're going to finish it. So I finish. And okay. So now if you go to this virtual machine, notice I added this virtual machines while the machine is running. You follow? This machine is running and I added the virtual disk. I don't think I can do the same thing using generation 1 because this is generation 2. I believe that'll give us the options to run it, to add disk while the machine is running. So if you go back to setting, you can tell I'm using generation 2 from this screen right here because I don't have IDE, I don't have legacy network card, I don't have any of those options. So you can tell from this screen that I'm using generation 2. Anytime you see SCSI and you didn't see any legacy drives here, you mean you're using generation 2. So how are we going to see that disk? So if you double click in here and go log into this machine, go to disk management. Wrong password. Password 01. Okay, so now you right click in here, you go to disk management, and from disk management, you're gonna see a disk right here is not initialized. That's a 60 gig that we just attach it to this one here. So what you can do, you right click on it, you put them online, and then you initialize it. You need to put them online first, then you initialize the disk. And over here, they ask you what you want to do. You must initialize the disk before logical disk manager can access it. So over here, you can select the partition style. So you use a GPT, which is a guide partition table, or you can use the MBR. MBR is for a legacy old system. So if you have an old operating system that does not support GPT, then this is an option. But now the new generation supported, so we can select it. Voila, we got now disk right here. We have the disk already. And from here, you can do whatever you want to do with it. You can create a new volume. You can do whatever you want. So they have a lot of different options from here. Okay, any question at this point? All righty. Let's see. Anybody join on Yeah, we have a few people join. That's good. So now back to the slides to see the next topic. I want to keep this one running, so I'm going to minimize it. And we talked about this one here. Okay, this is another options passing through disks. So what they say, if you have some kind of a disk in your host, attached to your host, which is, let's see, I think I have one, and it's not doing anything. It's just sitting in there and it's connected, which is I have the iOmega USB, which is about 2 terabytes or so. Is plug it. I plug it to that host. So let's see. By the way, this is the host. Okay, I have disk number 3, I believe. Oh, what happened? I lost it. Let's see. Did I add it to another machine? I don't know. Let's see. I think I added to one of the machines. Let's see what let's see over here. I think in one of those I added. I don't know. Let's see. Right click, disk management. If one of the machines has 2 terabytes of disk, that means that's it. I was practicing yesterday. I think one of these has them. Let's see. Maybe this. Start. Let me see. Let me go see if I can unplug it, plug it back to that machine. Okay, I plugged it back to. I have this 2 terabytes. Basically, I can connect with network or I can connect it to USB. So I'm connecting it with the USB. But this is one of the options you can do. If you have external disk, it's not in use, you can use it as a pass-through disk. Well, first of all, we need to understand the definition. So if you look at 250, page 250, and they talk about pass-through disk. Pass-through disk is not a virtual disk, it's a physical disk. And usually you need to put an offline state in the host. So if you have a physical disk attached to your host and it's on an offline state, then you can attach it to a virtual machine. Or you can connect it to a virtual machine. And this is what they're talking about. Basically, a pass-through disk is not a virtual disk. It's a physical disk in the offline state that is attached to the host. It can be connected to a VM only. This is underline that. Connected to a VM only if it has been set to offline state or status. If you have an offline physical disk on the host, you can attach it to VM in the VM setting windows. So, let's see. Let me go to this one here. Let's see. Come on. So that's a chapter 7. Talks about all this stuff right here. Let me log in. I need to change that keyboard. Okay. So if we go to the disk management here, let's see what we have here. That's another copy of server 2. That's the one we did import. Remember import and export? So let's see, go to disk management. Okay. Well, I don't have it here. This is 99. No, let's see. Well, if that's the case, go to disk management again on the host. I'm supposed to have 2 terabyte on disk number 3. Yeah, it's right here. See that? So I'll put it offline. You see, a while ago it wasn't there because I don't know what happened. So I have to unplug it from the USB and plug it back. But this is like an iOmega disk, which has like 4 disks actually. It's a 4 hard drive with RAID 5 or RAID 6. I don't remember. But now it's available because it's offline. Now I can attach it to a virtual machine. And the way you do this, you have to go to settings, okay? The virtual machine settings. So let me minimize or close this one here. Let me shut down this one, media, which is okay. I can do that. Minimize this one here. You can right click, go to settings, and you go to SCSI, hard drive or hard disk. Let's see. Yeah, what is it? SCSI, this is SCSI. Hard drive, you add, I believe. Oh, yeah, it's right here. See that? You add it and you put a physical hard disk. So you go this one here and you can select it right here. Okay, this is disk 3, which is attached to the host. But in order to attach it, it has to be in the offline mode. You follow? And now I can attach it to this physical to this virtual machine. So this is very important to understand. So for a lab, if you want to do this lab, you need to attach any size hard drive you want, whatever hard drive disk you want, would do the host. After you connect it to the host, you need to put it in the offline mode. Once you put it in offline mode, it makes it available to attach it to the physical, to the virtual machine. Like you go to setting and you do like we did. Okay. So that's another topic about storage. Of course, you can say, okay, attach it, and you follow the wizard on that. Or you need to remove it, you can. So if you put okay here, you got it in here. So let's go. We can go to the disk management, and we can see if it's there or not. Voila, it's right here. See that? Now you can put them online and you can partition it and you can use it for whatever you want to do with it. So, so this is how you attach a physical disk. They call it pass-through disk. So that's not, originally this is not a virtual disk. This physical disk existed on the host. It has to be on the offline status. then you can attach it to a virtual machine. Any question about this part? Okay, moving on to the next topic. Well, let's see, where's the PowerPoint? Minimize. Okay, that's basically we're talking about the pass-through disk. So what they're talking about here, a pass-through disk has modest performance advantage over virtual disk, but lacks the flexibility of virtual disk. Of course, it has performance because this is like a real machine, but you cannot move it from one place to the other because it's not a file, it's a physical. So an advantage of pass-through disk over VHD disk are limited to terabytes. Well, yeah, this is like if you do big storage. In my case, it's the same thing. It's 2 terabytes. So that's how you do it. So you have a disk where whatever the size is, LUN 1, target 0. So and it's going to be listed in the SCSI controller 3, which is disk 4 in this case. The next topic talks about storage quality of service, enable administrators to specify minimum and maximum performance value for virtual hard disk. And this is basically you give priorities for different virtual machines. So let's just say the maximum specified a value limit, and VMs access a virtual hard disk to prevent it from consuming too many storage resources. It can affect other VMs accesses the storage. Storage quality of service can be set on IDE or SCSI virtual disk. And this is like if you go, I think same places like we went a while ago. Let's see if we can point this one here. Right here. Let's see. You go to setting, I guess. You can see if you expand any disk. If you click on any disk and you put a quality of service, and this is how you enable quality of service management. And this is where you can control the IOPS, because now usually you have to do this. You have to know the types of the virtual machines you have, because you want to give a priority for certain machines or that's running, for example, intense applications. So they need that extra IOPS, okay? And you don't want to give extra IOPS for machines, somebody playing game on it or something, you know? So that's why that's what you need to make sure you give the minimum, you set the minimum and maximum on the right machines. Now, if you enable this one here, let's see, and this is you give the minimum and the maximum IOPS to accept system default setting minimum or maximum, but not both, value to 0. So over here, what they're saying is, I think in the book, they give an example. You get 2 options to do this. Some of them they call aggregated policy, which is you can set it up for, I say, they suggested in your book. Like, for example, 1,000 IOPS at minimum, maximum 5,000, and so on. Now, if you have a dedicated policy, which is different, apply the minimum and maximum value to each virtual disk. The policy is applied to it. So if dedicated policy with the same limits is applied to 5 virtual disks, each disk is guaranteed the respective minimum and maximum IOPS value. So it depends on the policy. Usually the people who specialize in storage, they can determine and do the math for the setting over here. But for regular virtual machines like we run it right now over here, we don't have to worry about it. But this is like, for example, if you have a virtual machines running applications, like for example, like a database or something, and need fast access to records or stuff, you need to enhance that IOPS in it. So it depends on the types of virtual machines you're running. Any question at this point? Of course, you have some labs you can do on virtual machines. So I don't know. Okay, so let's see. Man, I opened so many screen for this. Okay, so we'll minimize this one here. And that's the quality, minimum 1,000, 10,000. You can do the settings here. And the reason why you want this one here to give, you don't want like one VMs to take all the IOPS on the storage. Oh. And that's, they talking about the policy, storage, quality of service requirements, scenarios. Hyper-V is used in a scale out of file server. Hyper-V is used with a cluster share volume. That's another one. And you have two storage quality of service policies. They have the aggregated policy and the dedicated. So let's see what they're saying about the aggregated policies. Applies to the minimum and maximum IOPS, which is input out operation per second. Values to a set of virtual disk working as a whole. And they have some kind of calculation in there. I remember a long time ago we used to do calculation. Okay, so what they're saying here on your book on page 252, you can set a minimum and maximum per second IOPS. Each 8K of data read or written per second is considered one IO operations. You follow? That's on page 252. So that's like a reference. And they highlight that. You see what I'm saying? Click. So what they say, you set a minimum and maximum IOP operation per second. Each 8 kilobyte of data read or written per second is considered one IOP operations. So that's on page 252. So it's a good good research topic. If you want to expand on this one here, it's a good research topics to understand how the IOPS works. You know, like if you run in a data center and you're in charge of storage, usually the storage engineers, they know what to do at this point with this one here. It takes some specialties. It's not only to do the aggregated policy and dedicated policy. Also, whenever you decide to buy storage for your data center, okay, you need to understand the mechanics of this one here. What kind of disk you want? The first question they ask, okay, what is the IOPS? So if you major in storage or data center, all these questions, you need to be familiar with these operations. Let's see. Now, we don't talk too much about Hyper-V virtual network, which is another topic. because we know we don't use physical, in the real world, we use physical network cards and physical switches. In Hyper-V, we don't use that. We use virtual disk. I mean, a virtual network card and virtual switches. Why are we still on this one here? Let's see. Hyper-V, Hyper-V, Hyper-V. Okay, let's see. Uh, okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. They talk about the switches. We have three kinds of switches. External virtual switch. This is very important to understand that, which is basically normally, okay? That's the norm. If you have a physical host, usually you have the physical host have a multiple of what? Network card. Multiple of physical network cards on it. So, um, so what is the use? How are you going to use those multiple physical network cards on the host? Well, some people that said, okay, you can whenever you create a virtual switch, okay, so you can bind some of these network cards into a virtual switch, into the external virtual switch. And the word external means what? Um, let's see if we can do some explanation here. Let's see, line here. That's not my favorite. So this is basically your host right here. And let's say this one has multiple NICs. And this guy has let's say multiple virtual machines. Okay, so this is virtual machine, this is virtual machine, this is virtual machine, this is virtual machines. Now, in this point right here, we expect your this is your network card, physical card, and this is usually is connected to a virtual, not virtual, to a physical switch. Okay, somewhere in your network. Okay, so this is like port 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is connected to over here somehow. Okay, so now your virtual machines here as VMs. Okay, so and able to communicate, well, you got three options to communicate. So you can create what we call a virtual switch. And that virtual switch could be external virtual switch, which is means I'm going to have a virtual switch right here. Let's say it's not physical, it's virtual. And we're going to bind this one to this network card right here. Or maybe if this one is combined, I can, sometimes we have a neck teaming, and that's what we're going to talk about. You can combine all these four NICs into one, okay? All these four physical one, we combine it into one. And that's what we explained in the Ether channel, if you remember. We combine physical ports into one logical. Anyway, so, and you connect your virtual machines to the switch right here. And this is we call external External virtual switch, VSW, whatever you want to name it. External virtual switch. So what does that mean, external? I'm binding this virtual switch to a physical network card on the host. So when you do this, you're going to allow all the virtual machines that's plugged to this switch to communicate with each other's, because they're going to be on the same network, and to communicate with the host, and it's communicating with the outside. Like you can go to the internet, to the cloud, or whatever this is leads you to. So that's basically why you need external switch. Now somebody said, well, I don't need those people to go to the outside. Then in this case, you need to create some other types of virtual switch. We call it internal. Internal, if this is internal, not external, those guys can talk to each other. That's connected to the switch. And also they have connections to the host. That's it. But they cannot go outside. So, and there's another form of switch. You can do, what do you call it? We have internal, external, and we have what? Private. We can do private switch. The private switch, basically only VMs talk to each other and they cannot talk to the host. Okay, so this is the options. Anyway, let's stick with the definition what they say. External virtual switch, like I said, binds, that's a key word, binds a virtual switch to one of the host physical network adapter. So that's the key right here. That's the key. You bind it to physical network adapter. Okay. So it allows VMs to access a LAN connected to the host. So that's, well, this is my LAN right here. And this is the host. Looks like a ghost, not a host. And you can allow the VMs to go to anywhere this host is connected to. Only one external switch can be created per physical network adapter. So if your physical, let's say if you have a host that has only one NIC, like my case, I cannot create multiple external switch and bind it to the same physical card on the host. See, it's going to give me an error. And it gave me an error because I bind it before and I tried to bind it again. It didn't work. Now, if you have a multiple physical networks, then I can create multiple external virtual switch, and I can tie each external virtual switch to a different NICs or different physical NICs on the host. So that's possible. Any question about this part? Is that clear? Okay, the last options here, which is the like for example here, the last portion here, what they're talking about. Having more than one physical NIC installed on the host computer is recommended. Well, I've seen we bought some server 2012, I believe. We bought some HP and Dell. So my experience, yes, they have, at least from 2012 servers that we bought. We have on each not blade server, like those rack mounted server. They have, each server has about 4 NICs, 4 network cards. And that's you need network cards for multiple of reasons, even not for virtualization, especially on server, because server, everybody wants to access the server. So that's why you need multiple NICs for load balancing and for redundancy too. Any question at this point? Man, I don't know. There should be a faster way to delete all that stuff. I don't learn it yet, so I need to practice. Okay, so we'll go to the next topic. If you don't have, let's see. And that's what they're talking about right here. So you can dedicate one of the NIC to host communication, and the other NIC can be bounded to the external virtual disk when NIC is designated for use. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. So instead, if you go to your, this is your Hyper-V manager, which is this is on the host. If you go virtual switch manager, and that's what I have. I have two switches I created. That's the external, and I bound it to my physical network card that's in the host. And also you need to check allow management operating system to share this network adapter. Okay. Now I have another internal switch. Notice that is not binding to any physical because this is internal. Okay. So now if I want to create another virtual switch, what is it? Virtual switch manager. I can go private and create a virtual switch, and I call it private PRI SW for private, and you go next. Private means what? All the VMs talk to each other, but that's it. They don't talk to anybody else, even the host. So that's basically if you put like a couple of virtual machines, only want to talk to each other. They don't want to talk to the host. They don't talk to anybody outside or so. You can do that. You can do it private. Let's minimize this one here. So when the NIC is designated for use in an external virtual switch, Windows binds the Hyper-V extensible virtual switch protocol to the physical NIC and binds it all other protocols. This is that the word binds is an old terminology. We used to use it a long time ago, because also you bind the protocol like what? What protocol? TCP, like version IPv4, IPv6. And if you're using a different a protocol, like for example IPX, AppleTalk, also NetBEUI, whatever protocol that operating system support, you can bind it to the NIC. So one of the question is, can I bind or multiple protocols to the same network card? And the answer is yes. Okay, so this is to give you some kind of visualize pictures on host physical computer, host network application and protocol. This is the host NICs. This is the physical switch. Basically, your NIC is connected to this. Now, when you create virtual, that's VM1, VM2, and this is where you create your external virtual switch, and you combine it to your physical network. Now, when you do that, is going to look different on your host. So let's go to my host and see. So that's my host. If you go to my host, let's see, how's the networks connected? Uh, change network adoptions. Yeah, you see that? Because now it's managed. That's the regular one. Now I have a V Ethernet external. I have two of them. I was testing different things. This is basically undefined. See that? This is the one I have. If you go to properties in it, well, actually, status. And this is they use my DHCP server, which is connected to like the router. So any virtual machine is connected to this virtual switch, which is bind to this NIC. Okay, you can get an IP address actually from the DHCP server on the network. Why? Because you can actually what? You can communicate with the host network. Now, of course, they talk about internal virtual switch, which allow virtual machines and the host computer to communicate with one another, but does not give VM access to the physical network. So this is very important. Now, why is it important? Because whenever you create virtual machines, this is one of the questions. You don't jump on the server and start creating. The question is who, how, and who's going to access them? What is the purpose of that virtual machines? Are they going to be accessed from the outside? So all of this need to be in. Now, of course, someone said, okay, I can do them internally. Then I can create a special switch and apply NAT on it. So even though it's connected internally, but I can implement NAT and allow the local internal VMs to access outside. And this is only can happen if you implement NAT. So virtual switch is created, but is internal to Hyper-V and cannot be seen on the host computer. The new virtual NIC attempt to get the address by the HCP, but because it does not have a connection to the physical network, it's assigned an IP address, which is 169 address. Let's see what's happening to my virtual machines here. Because this one, as you can say, this is running, which is okay. And you go to settings. And actually, I have two NICs here. I added the other NIC. And if you go over here, it's connected to internal switch. So if I go, click on this guy here to start. Let's see, password. What is the password? Password 01. Now I have two NICs in this one here. Two virtual NICs, I should say. Okay, so I have stp.local. This is what part of the domain, and I change it, I believe. Let's see. Change adapter options. Cannot be accessed. Great. Why is that? I know why. Because it's part of NIC teaming. I was practicing NIC teaming. Let's see. Setting. Let's see. Let's see. So let's see. We go to server manager here. You go to local, and I was having NIC teaming. Okay, so this is even wrong one because it was on the external switch. So let's see this one here. That's a long one. Let's see, properties. Yeah, this is what's. See, I was doing it. Now, this machine was part of the domain, so I'm using a different address. So now it's on a DHCP, and we're gonna have a different IP address. We're gonna have the Alpipa. Okay, so if you go to status, can you go to status in here? Details. I have 169.254 address. And the reason why, because this is part of the internal switch, which doesn't have access to the DHCP server, which is on the external network. Okay, which is the other side of the host. So those guys cannot communicate with the host because they are in the. I mean, they can communicate with the host, but they cannot access the DHCP server that's on the same network as the host. Okay. What time is it? No, yeah, we have time. When devices on the physical network do not need direct access to the VMs and vice versa. So that's the internal. That's internal switch. So only they can connect to the host, but not anything outside that host. And that's the private switch we talked about earlier. You put your virtual machines on a private switch. If that's the case, you isolate all the VMs that plugged into that switch from any communication with any other virtual machines or physical. Why? Because it's private. Even if you have a internal switch, let's say we have two virtual machines, one on the internal and one on the private. The private only can talk only to the private. They cannot talk even to the internal. Okay. So if you have a virtual machine, let's see, blue is good. So that's my private switch. And you have a VMs right here. Okay, this is all my VMs. And it's connected to this. Okay, and I have another switch right here. I'm talking about virtual switches, okay, not physical. And this is private, this is internal, and you have a bunch of VMs connected to a bunch of VMs. Okay. So those cannot talk to each other. Now, all the VMs connected to this, they talk to each other. Why? Because that's why it's private. And also, they cannot talk to the host. Even those in the host, they cannot talk to him because they are totally isolated. And that's the key word, isolate. You get the idea? So somebody said, why you want to do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons for testing purposes, for security purposes, whatever. You can create. So far we talked about 3 different types of virtual switches, which is external, internal, and private. So you need to know the properties for each one of them and what they can access. Okay. And what's the relationship between each one of them with the physical network card on the host. So the only case that we can bind to the physical network card on the host is the external switch. Okay. Any question at this point? Somebody said something. Are you guys still there? Give me a flag that you're alive and you're paying attention. And yeah. Somebody said some. All right. Of course, they talk about creating a virtual switch. I showed you how to do that. Also, you can do VLANs in that. You can select VLANs. Let's see if we go back to this one here. When you go to setting here, and you go to network cards. Also, you can, if you want, you can enable a virtual LAN identification. You can manage the bandwidth because you don't want a specific, you can put minimum, maximum. And the reason for that, because if you have a server, you might give more bandwidth for the server than regular machines. Okay, so you can do that and manage that. So there's a lot of settings, but you need to understand each setting what it does. Okay. Let's see. Any question about the types of switches? Create the switch. This is what we already did. Configure MAC address. VM network adapter must have a unique MAC address. Okay, so those are allocated dynamically. The MAC addresses by Hyper-V, which is Microsoft. They have about from 0 to FF, which is to give you 255 combinations of MAC addresses on the Hyper-V management. So let's see, where are this stuff is located? So if you go to Hyper-V, virtual switch, I believe. If you expand, I think this one here. Let's see. They're supposed to have some about. Is that virtual machine manager? Hyper-V setting. It's somewhere here. I forgot where. It's supposed to be. Create a virtual machine. Let's see. Nope. Let me see. Where is that located? It's supposed to be there. MAC address range. Let's see. So when you go, for example, to virtual switch manager, supposed to, okay, MAC address right here, MAC address range right here. They give you from 0 to FFF. Notice that all these are, the first half is similar, or actually all similar. And because it's a Microsoft Hyper-V MAC addresses, so that's the addresses. Now, you can change this one here. You can edit. You can do whatever you want. You can give a static address if you want to any network card. But this is allocated dynamically, so you don't have to fool with it. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop right here. So if anybody has any question, and we'll resume tomorrow from here. We still have a lot of topics to talk about, but if you don't have questions, I'm gonna end it right here. Cancel. I have a lot of, let's see, Hyper-V. Let me turn those Hyper-V off. Turn off, turn off. Any question? No question? Okay. I'll see you in a little bit. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Thanks, sir.